The year is 1502. To understand the magnitude of this story, you must first understand the world that birthed it. It is a world on the razor's edge. To the west, Christopher Columbus has just returned from his third voyage, bringing back news of a new world that is slowly rewriting the maps of antiquity. To the south, Vasco da Gama has shattered the silence of the Indian Ocean, his cannons announcing that Europe has finally bypassed the Islamic blockade to reach the spices of India. The tectonic plates of history are shifting. The Mediterranean, once the center of the universe, is becoming a backwater. The Atlantic is rising. Empires are colliding. It is an age of giants, of conquistadors, of kings, and of ruthless merchant princes. But in the quiet university city of Bologna, Italy, there is a man who cares for none of this. His name is Ludovico de Varthema. He is not a soldier seeking glory. He is not a merchant seeking gold. He is a gentleman of leisure, a man of books and comfortable means. By all accounts, he should be content to stay in his villa, raise his children, and die in his bed. But Ludovico is haunted. In the opening lines of his journal, he confesses a secret that separates him from every other explorer of his age. He writes that while others sought wealth, he possessed a yearning to behold the various kingdoms of the world. He was driven by a hunger, not for territory, but for sight. He wanted to verify the ancients. He wanted to know if the world described by Ptolemy and Strabo was real.
He calls it a madness of the spirit. Today we might call it wanderlust, but in 1502, leaving your home without a royal charter or a trade mission wasn't just eccentric, it was a death sentence. Yet, he goes. He leaves his wife, he leaves his child. He packs a simple kit, likely little more than a few changes of clothes, a dagger, and a heavy purse of gold coins sewn into his doublet. He travels first to Venice, the great eye of Europe, and buys passage on a galley bound for the east. As the coast of Italy fades into the mist, Varthema is crossing a definitive line. He is sailing into the territory of the Mameluke Sultanate.
For centuries, the Mamelukes of Egypt and Syria had been the gatekeepers of the East. They controlled the spice trade, the Red Sea, and the holy cities of Islam. To a Christian European, the Mameluke Empire was a fortress. You could trade at the edges, in Alexandria or Beirut, but you could not enter the interior. To march inland was to risk imprisonment, slavery, or execution as a spy. Varthema lands in Alexandria, Egypt in early 1503. The city is a sensory assault. He describes the towering lighthouse, the Pharos, largely in ruins, but still imposing. He walks through markets that smell of cinnamon, rot, and sea salt. He sees men of every nation, Turks, Ethiopians, Persians, Indians. It is here, in the shadow of the Mameluke garrisons, that Varthema realizes the futility of his Italian identity. He watches the Christian merchants, the Venetians and Genoese, huddled in their fondacos, trading compounds, terrified to step outside without guards. They are prisoners of their own prophet. Varthema wants to be free. He wants to see the source of the Nile. He wants to see the Red Sea. He wants to see the tomb of the prophet. So, he makes a decision that is chilling in its calculation. He decides to cease to be Ludovico. He begins to learn Arabic. He likely hires a tutor, sitting in the dusty courtyards of Alexandria, twisting his tongue around the guttural sounds of a language that Europe considered the tongue of the enemy. He studies the Quran. He observes the prayers, the ablutions, the rhythm of Islamic life. And then he takes the final step. He converts. He adopts the name Yunus, Jonah. Historians have argued for 500 years about this moment. Was it a sincere spiritual conversion? Varthema never explicitly says. In his book, written for the Pope, he claims it was all a ruse, a necessary evil to survive. But his knowledge of Islamic ritual was so profound, so flawless, that he would go on to fool imams and sultans for the next 5 years. You do not fake that level of devotion
without a piece of your soul going with it. Now transformed, Yunus the Mameluke leaves Alexandria. He travels up the Nile to Cairo, a city he describes as vast and teeming. He marvels at the pyramids, though he, like many of his time, confuses them with the granaries of Joseph from the Bible.
From Egypt, he sails up the coast to Beirut and finally treks inland to Damascus. Damascus is the staging ground. It is the beating heart of the Mameluke military machine. Here, Varthema pulls off his greatest con yet. He uses his gold to bribe his way into the Mameluke garrison. The Mamelukes were an elite caste of slave soldiers, mostly Circassians and Turks from the steppes, raised from boyhood to be killing machines. And somehow, this soft-handed Italian nobleman talks his way into their ranks. He learns to ride like a Mameluke. He learns to fight with the curved scimitar. He learns to shoot a bow from horseback. He spends months living in the barracks, eating from the communal bowl, laughing at their jokes, praying alongside them 5 times a day. He is waiting for one thing. Every year, a massive event consumes Damascus, the Hajj, the great pilgrimage to Mecca. Thousands of camels, tens of thousands of pilgrims, and a massive military escort to protect them from the Bedouin raiders of the desert. Varthema knows that no Christian has ever seen the holy cities and lived to tell the tale. If he joins the caravan as a soldier, he will be the first. In April 1503, the drums sound. The caravan assembles outside the gates of Damascus. It is a city on the move, a river of silk and steel. Varthema mounts his horse. He checks his sword. He looks back at the road to Europe, and then he turns away. He rides south, into the sea of sand, and into the forbidden history of the world. April 8th, 1503. The gates of Damascus swing open. It begins with a sound that Varthema describes as thunder on the earth. 35,000 camels rise to their feet. 40,000 pilgrims, men, women, and children from every corner of the Islamic world, begin to move. This is the Great Hajj Caravan. It is a moving city, a ribbon of humanity stretching for miles into the Syrian desert. And riding in the vanguard, clad in the white robes and chainmail of a Mameluke soldier, is Ludovico de Varthema. He is no longer an observer, he is a protector. For the next 40 days, he enters what he calls the Sea of Sand. The journey is a nightmare of logistics and survival. Varthema writes of heat so intense that men's skin cracked like dry mud. Water is more precious than gold. Wells are guarded by Mameluke archers. If a pilgrim falls behind, they are left to the mercy of the desert and the Bedouin. Varthema describes the Bedouin tribes not as romantic nomads, but as terrifying ghosts who materialize out of the dunes to raid the caravan. "We fought for 2 days and 2 nights," he records. "They came upon us like a swarm of locusts." Picture this: a Renaissance Italian nobleman fighting for his life on the back of a camel, swinging a Mameluke scimitar against Arab raiders, screaming battle cries in Arabic. He is so deep undercover that he is killing to maintain his cover. He survives the skirmishes. He survives the thirst. And finally, the sprawling palm groves of Medina appear on the horizon. Medina, the city of the prophet. For centuries, medieval Europe had been fed a diet of wild myths about this place. The most persistent legend was that the Prophet Muhammad's iron coffin floated in midair, suspended by powerful lodestones in the roof of the mosque. It was a story told in taverns from London to Rome. Varthema enters the city with his heart in his throat. If he is discovered here, there is no trial. There is only execution. He walks into the Prophet's mosque. He pushes through the crowd of weeping pilgrims. He approaches the tomb. He looks up, and in that moment, Ludovico de Varthema becomes the first man to fact-check the Middle Ages. "It is not true," he writes simply. "There is no floating coffin. There are no magnets. He describes the tomb with the cold, clinical eye of a journalist. He notes the silk tapestries, the heavy grates, the books of the Quran. He dismantles the fantasy of Europe with the reality of his own eyes. But Medina is only the prelude. The caravan rests for 3 days, then pushes south. The terrain becomes even more unforgiving. They are marching toward the center of the Islamic world, Mecca. They arrive at night. Varthema describes the sensation of walking into the valley of Mecca as entering a cauldron. The heat is trapped by the surrounding mountains. The air is thick with the dust of thousands of feet and the smoke of cooking fires. He enters the great mosque, and there, in the center of the vast courtyard, stands the Kaaba. He describes it as a house of God, draped in black silk embroidered with gold. He watches as a sea of white-robed pilgrims circles it, a human whirlpool of devotion. Varthema joins them. He performs the tawaf, circling the Kaaba 7 times. He kisses the black stone. He drinks from the Zamzam well. He is the first non-Muslim European to perform these rites and live to write about them. But beneath the awe, there is terror. Varthema is terrified of his own voice. He writes that he hardly dared to speak for fear that his accent would betray him. He is surrounded by Mamelukes, Persians, Indians, and Africans. One slip of the tongue, one mistake in the ritual prayer, and the mob would tear him apart. He survives the days of ritual. He witnesses the great sacrifice on Mount Arafat, where he claims 30,000 sheep were slaughtered in a single day, the blood turning the ground to mud. He is overwhelmed by the spectacle, the piety, and the sheer scale of the event. But as the Hajj ends, the caravan prepares to return to Syria. Varthema is at a crossroads. If he goes back to Damascus, his journey ends. He will return to Italy with a good story, but he will never see the East. He will never see the spices. He will never see the monsters of India. So he makes a choice that seals his fate. The caravan moves to the port of Jeddah on the Red Sea. In the chaos of the departure, Varthema slips away from his Mameluke unit. He hides in a corner of a local mosque, crouching in the shadows, listening to the hoofbeats of his comrades fading away. He is now truly alone. He has no protection. He has no passport. He is a renegade Christian spy in the most closed society on earth. He bribes a ship captain to take him south toward Yemen. He thinks he has escaped the danger of Mecca. He is wrong. He is sailing straight into a trap. The Red Sea is a knife slash between continents. It is hot, treacherous, and in 1503, it is a war zone. Varthema is now a fugitive. He has abandoned the safety of the Mameluke caravan. He has boarded a small dhow in Jeddah, huddled among the cargo, praying for a swift wind to carry him south. He is sailing toward Aden, the great fortress city of Yemen. In the 16th century, Aden was the Gibraltar of the East. It was the lock on the door to the Indian Ocean. No ship could pass without the Sultan's permission. But Varthema is sailing into a geopolitical minefield. Just a few years earlier, Vasco da Gama had rounded Africa. Portuguese ships were beginning to appear in these waters like sharks, sinking Muslim pilgrim ships, burning ports, and demanding tribute. The atmosphere in Aden is one of paranoia. Every white face is seen as a harbinger of doom. When Varthema steps off the boat, the trap snaps shut. His disguise, the turban, the robes, the Arabic is perfect, but his skin is too pale. His eyes are too light. He is hauled before the Vice Sultan of Yemen. The interrogation is brutal. "You are a Christian," the Sultan accuses. "You are a spy for the Portuguese dogs." Varthema denies it. He shouts the Shahada. He claims to be a Mameluke of Damascus, a holy warrior. But the Sultan is not convinced. He orders Varthema stripped and searched. They find no cross, no Bible, but they find his skin, the pale skin of a European. The verdict is swift: throw him in the pit. For the first time, Varthema's luck runs out. He is dragged to the dungeon. Blacksmiths rivet heavy iron shackles onto his ankles, 18 pounds of cold metal. He is thrown into a dark, suffocating cell. He spends 65 days in this hell. The heat of Yemen is relentless. Varthema writes that he expected to die there, rotting in the dark, another anonymous victim of the collision between East and West. He watches other prisoners be dragged out to execution. He knows his turn is coming. But Ludovico de Varthema is not just a traveler, he is a survivor. And in the darkness of that cell, he hatches a plan so desperate, so bizarre, that it belongs in a psychological thriller. He decides to go insane. In the Islamic world of the 16th century, the majzub, the madman, occupied a unique space. Madness was often seen not as an illness, but as a touch of the divine. To harm a madman was bad luck. To feed him was an act of charity. So, Varthema begins his performance. He stops speaking. He stares at the wall for hours, unblinking. When guards bring him food, he throws it at them. He tears his clothes. He begins to fight with the other prisoners, screaming gibberish, foaming at the mouth. He commits to the role with terrifying intensity. The guards are unnerved. They whisper that the white Mameluke has been broken by God. They stop beating him. They start stepping around him warily. Word of the holy madman reaches the palace. And here, the story takes a turn that is almost too cinematic to be true. The Sultan of Yemen is away at war. His wife, the queen, hears the rumors. She is bored. She is curious. She orders the madman brought to her private apartments so she can observe him. Varthema is dragged up from the dungeon, still in his irons, filthy and bearded. He is placed in a room near the queen's quarters. For days she watches him. She tests him. She sends her handmaidens to taunt him, to see if he breaks character. Varthema writes, with a hint of Italian bravado, that he played the madman by attacking the women with stones, driving them away. The queen is delighted. She laughs. She is convinced. And then, one night, Varthema drops the act, just for her. He speaks to her. He recites poetry. He tells her of the great cities of Cairo and Damascus. He weaves a spell of words. He becomes Scheherazade. Whether they became lovers is a matter of historical debate. Varthema certainly implies it in his book, perhaps to impress his readers back home. But the emotional bond was real. The queen begins to feed him chickens and spices. She argues with the guards. Finally, she commands that his irons be struck off. He is a holy man, she declares. He must be free. The shackles fall. Varthema is technically free to roam the palace, but he is still a prisoner of the city. He knows the Sultan will return soon. He has to move. He feigns a pilgrimage to a local saint's tomb. He slips out of the city gates, and he runs. He treks into the high mountains of Yemen. He walks for days, his feet bleeding, his body weak from months of prison. He reaches the city of Sana'a, describing it as a paradise of water and fruits compared to the hell of the coast. But he cannot stay. The Red Sea is behind him. The only way forward is east. He travels overland to the port of Aden's rival city. He finds a Persian ship bound for India. He has no money left, only the gold sewn into his clothes that he managed to hide from the guards. He steps onto the deck. The sails catch the monsoon wind. As the coast of Arabia fades into the mist, Varthema looks back one last time. He has survived the desert. He has survived the dungeon. He has survived the queen. Ahead of him lies the Arabian Sea, and beyond that, the land that has haunted the dreams of Europe for 1,000 years. India. The year is 1504. To a European in the early 16th century, India was not just a country, it was a hallucination. It was the land of Prester John, of gem-studded palaces, of monsters and miracles. It was the edge of reality. When Varthema steps off the ship in the kingdom of Gujarat, the world changes color. Gone are the browns and ochres of the Arabian desert. Suddenly, everything is green. The air is heavy with humidity. The smell of the earth is rich and rotting. He has entered a world that operates on rules he cannot comprehend. His first encounter is with the Sultan of Cambay, a man named Mahmud Begada. Varthema's description of this king is one of the most famous and terrifying passages in travel literature. He presents Mahmud not as a man, but as a biological weapon. His mustachios, Varthema writes, were so long that he tied them over his head as a woman ties her tresses. But it is the Sultan's diet that horrifies the Italian. Varthema records a local legend as absolute fact. He claims that Mahmud's father had fed him small doses of poison since childhood: aconite, opium, arsenic. The result was a king whose very flesh was toxic. Varthema swears that if a fly landed on the Sultan's hand, it would swell up and drop dead instantly. He claims that if the Sultan chewed a betel leaf and spat it upon an enemy, the man would die within the hour. And most tragically, he writes of the Sultan's harem. He claims that any woman who slept with the king was found dead the next morning, her body cold, poisoned by his mere touch. Is this true? Almost certainly not. Mahmud Begada was a real and powerful ruler, a giant of a man with a voracious appetite. But the poison story was likely a myth spun by his enemies to explain his terrifying strength. Yet, Varthema believes it. To him, India is a place where kings can kill with a kiss. Varthema travels south. He moves down the coast, through the Deccan, observing the strange contradictions of this land. He encounters the Jains, a religious sect of extreme nonviolence. He watches them sweep the ground before they walk so they do not step on an ant. He sees them wearing masks to avoid inhaling a gnat. Coming from Renaissance Europe, a world of constant war, torture, and public execution, this radical pacifism baffles him. But as he reaches Calicut, the city of spices, the violence returns. Calicut, modern-day Kozhikode, is the great emporium of the Indian Ocean. It is the prize that Vasco da Gama had shelled just a few years earlier. It is a city of immense wealth, ruled by the Zamorin. Here, Varthema's the Nayars walk through the streets, naked from the waist up, carrying swords and shields, their hair tied in distinct knots. They scream as they walk, a high warning cry. Why? Because of the untouchables, the Poliar in Herava castes. Varthema notes with shock that if a peasant fails to move off the road, the Nayar is entitled by law to cut him down where he stands. If they did not carry arms, Varthema writes of the Nayars, they would no longer be gentlemen. He sees a society where honor is inextricably linked to the right to kill. Then he visits the temples. As a devout Catholic from 1504, Varthema lacks the vocabulary to understand Hinduism. He enters the dark, incense-filled shrines of Calicut. He sees the statues of the deities, multi-armed, fierce, holding weapons and severed heads. He calls them Deumo, devils. He describes the king of the devils seated on a throne, surrounded by souls in torment. It is a dark, Gothic description. He is likely seeing images of Bhairava or Kali, deities of destruction and time. But through his Italian eyes, he sees Dante's Inferno brought to life. He is horrified, yet he cannot look away. And then he witnesses the fire. Sati, the ritual burning of widows. Varthema is one of the first Europeans to give a detailed eyewitness account of this practice. He stumbles upon a funeral procession for a high nobleman. He describes the widow. She is dressed in her wedding finery, covered in garlands of flowers and heavy gold jewelry. He notes a peculiar detail. She is chewing betel constantly. Her eyes are glazed. She is in a trance. He realizes she is being drugged, numbed to the terror of what is to come. He watches as she is led to a pit dug into the earth, filled with burning sandalwood. He describes the crowd, the chanting, the deafening sound of drums and trumpets.
noise designed to drown out any screams. He sees her remove her jewels, handing them to her children as a final legacy. He watches her walk around the pit 3 times, and then he watches her jump. He writes of the horror of the moment, how the relatives instantly throw heavy logs and pots of oil onto her, ensuring she cannot climb out. Varthema is shaken to his core. He does not judge it with the colonial arrogance of later centuries, but with a somber, human pity. He sees the honor the culture ascribes to it. He notes that she does it to be with her husband in the next life, but he cannot reconcile the beauty of the woman with the brutality of the fire. He leaves the scene, the smell of burning wood and flesh clinging to his clothes. Most men would have fled back to the ships. Most men would have said, "I have seen enough." But Ludovico de Varthema is not most men. He looks at the map. He looks further east, past the tip of India, past the Bay of Bengal, to the islands where the spices grow. He hires a guide. He prepares to sail off the edge of the known world. By 1505, Ludovico de Varthema has done what no other European has done. He has seen the holy cities of Arabia. He has survived the dungeons of Yemen. He has walked the burning Ghats of India. Any sane man would have stopped there. The map of the known world ended at the Bay of Bengal. Beyond that lay the terra incognita, the lands of dragons, of sea serpents, of darkness. But Varthema is possessed. He writes that he had a great desire to see the world. It is a hunger that cannot be sated. He hires a Persian captain and a local guide. He leaves the relative safety of Hakluyt and sails east, into the vast emptiness of the Indian Ocean. His first stop is the kingdom of Pegu, modern-day Myanmar. Varthema enters a world of giants. He describes the king of Pegu as a ruler of unimaginable wealth. He writes of a ruby the king wears, a stone so large and so luminous that at night it shines like a fire. He does not need a torch to see in the dark, Varthema claims, for the stone lights his way. But it is the army that stuns him. He describes thousands of elephants, armored in copper and steel, moving like living tanks. He sees soldiers wearing jackets of quilted cotton, so thick that a sword cannot cut through them. He is witnessing the military might of Southeast Asia, a power completely unknown to the courts of Europe.
He presses on. He crosses the Tenasserim Hills and sails down the Strait of Malacca. He reaches the massive island of Sumatra. He calls it Taprobane, confusing it with the ancient name for Sri Lanka, a common mistake of the era. But his description is unmistakable. He speaks of the heavy rain, the silk, the gum benzoin, and the pepper. And yet he is not done. He asks his guide, "Where do the spices grow? The nutmeg? The cloves?" The guide points east, to the islands of the Banda Sea, the Moluccas.
This is the Holy Grail. For centuries, Europe had paid blood and gold for nutmeg and cloves, yet no European knew where they came from. Columbus had sailed west to find these islands and hit America instead. Magellan would die trying to reach them. But Varthema simply buys a ticket. He arrives in the Banda Islands. He walks among the nutmeg trees. He picks the fruit. He describes the bright red mace wrapping around the nut like a net.
He sails to the Moluccas, the home of the clove. He describes the air as being so thick with the scent of spices that it makes him dizzy. The people are savage and base, he writes, struggling to understand the cultures of the archipelago. They have no king. They worship the stars. He is standing at the source of the world's wealth. He is likely the first European to ever set foot on this soil. He has reached the end of the line. But as he sails south to the island of Java, the wonder turns to horror. Java is a nightmare for Varthema. He describes the people as the most warlike he has ever seen. He speaks of blowpipes that shoot poisoned darts, a weapon that terrifies him more than any cannon. But it is the rumors that break him. His Persian captain and the local guides are trembling. They tell him, "Sir, we must leave. The people here eat human flesh. If we stay, we are the food. Varthema looks at the dark, impenetrable jungles of Java. He sees the strange birds, flying monsters he calls them, likely large fruit bats or flying foxes, screeching in the twilight. He looks up at the sky. The North Star, the sailor's guide, the anchor of the Northern Hemisphere, has vanished below the horizon. In its place, he sees the Southern Cross. He realizes how far he is from Bologna. He is on the other side of the planet. There are no maps here. There are no embassies. If he dies here, his story dies with him. For 5 years he has pushed forward, but in Java, facing the threat of cannibalism and the crushing weight of isolation, Ludovico de Varthema finally breaks. He turns to his captain. "Let us go," he says. "I have seen enough." The return journey is a blur of panic. He is no longer the curious explorer. He is a man running for his life. He races back across the Indian Ocean. He dodges storms and pirates. He returns to the coast of India, to Cananore. But the world he returns to has changed. While he was gone, the Portuguese have cemented their grip. They are no longer just raiding, they are building. A fortress rises above the harbor at Cananore, flying the flag of King Manuel I. Varthema stands on the beach. He is dressed as a Muslim. He speaks Arabic. To the Portuguese sentries on the walls, he looks like the enemy. He faces the ultimate choice. He can remain Yunus, the Muslim traveler, and disappear into history. Or he can reveal himself, betray his hosts, and try to go home. He looks at the fort. He looks at the cross on the flag. He starts running.
The year is 1506. The coast of India is burning. Varthema has returned to Cananore, modern Connaught. But the geopolitical landscape has shifted violently since he first arrived. The Portuguese, led by the ruthless viceroy Dom Francisco de Almeida, have built a fortress, Fort St. Angelo, right on the edge of the harbor. It is a symbol of European dominance, a stone dagger pointing at the heart of the Indian trade network. The local rulers, the Zamorin of Calicut and the Raja of Cananore, are furious. They are gathering a massive fleet to crush the invaders. Varthema is trapped in the middle.
Under the cover of darkness, Varthema slips away from his Persian companions. He runs toward the Portuguese lines. Imagine the scene. The Portuguese sentries on the walls see a figure emerging from the shadows. He is dressed in the robes of a Mameluke. He has a dark beard. He looks like the enemy. They raise their crossbows. And then he speaks, not in Malayalam, not in Arabic, but in Italian. "I am a Christian," he shouts. "I am Ludovico." The gates open. He is dragged inside, not as a guest, but as a suspect. He is brought before Dom Francisco de Almeida. The viceroy is skeptical. Who is this man who claims to have walked from Cairo to Calicut, who claims to have seen Mecca?
But Varthema has currency more valuable than gold: intelligence. He spills everything. He tells Almeida about the Zamorin's fleet. He tells them how many ships are gathering, where they are hiding, what weapons they possess. He tells them about the political fractures between the Indian kings. In 1 hour, Varthema transforms from a pilgrim into a spy. He betrays the people who hosted him for half a decade. It is the darkest, most complicated moment of his journey. He chooses survival over loyalty. But Varthema is not content to hide in the cellar. He wants to prove he is not just a talker.
When the Battle of Cananore begins, the sea turns into a chaotic churn of fire and wood. The Zamorin sends hundreds of paraus, small, fast attack boats, to swarm the heavy Portuguese caravels. Varthema picks up a sword. He joins the Portuguese soldiers on the deck of the flagship. He describes the battle with the adrenaline of a soldier. He writes of the great bombardments, the smoke that turned day into night, the screams of men dying in the water. He fights with a desperation born of fear. If the Portuguese lose, there is no second chance for him. He will be executed as a traitor by the Indians.
But the Portuguese technology, the heavy cannons, the disciplined fire, wins the day. The Zamorin's fleet is shattered. When the smoke clears, Varthema is still standing. Dom Francisco de Almeida is impressed. He sees a man who is not just a scholar, but a survivor. In a ceremony on the blood-stained deck of the ship, or perhaps in the courtyard of the fort, the viceroy draws his sword. He taps Varthema on the shoulder. "Rise, Dom Ludovico." The backpacker from Bologna is knighted. He is given the official title of Cavaleiro of the Portuguese royal household. He has his validation. He is no longer a vagabond. He is a hero of the empire.
But the war is not over for Varthema. He spends another year in India, serving as a factor, trade agent, for the Portuguese in Cochin. He uses his language skills to negotiate spice deals. He is finally doing what he came to see. He is touching the wealth of the Indies. But the madness of the spirit that drove him has faded. He is tired. He misses the wife and child he left behind in Bologna 6 years ago. In December 1507, he boards the San Vincenzo, a ship bound for Lisbon. The journey home is a mirror of his journey out. He rounds the Cape of Good Hope, seeing the southern tip of Africa, a sight that had terrified sailors for centuries. He stops in the Azores. And finally, in 1508, he sees the harbor of Lisbon. He is brought before King Manuel I of Portugal. The king is hungry for information. He keeps Varthema at court for days, questioning him about the Red Sea, about Mecca, about the spices. Varthema tells him everything. The king is so pleased that he confirms Varthema's knighthood and grants him a pension. But Lisbon is not home. Varthema crosses the border into Spain, then takes a ship to Italy. He arrives in Rome. It has been nearly 7 years. He left as a nobody. He returns as the only man in Europe who knows what the inside of the Kaaba looks like. He retires to a quiet life, but he has one last task. He sits down to write. In 1510, his book is published, Itinerary de Ludovico de Varthema Bolognese. It spreads like wildfire. In an age before the internet, this was a viral sensation. It was translated into Latin, German, Spanish, Dutch, English. Why? Because it wasn't a dry list of coordinates. It was a story. It had sex, it had war, it had monsters, it had kings. It was the first true travelogue of the modern era. For the next 50 years, every mapmaker in Europe used Varthema as their primary source. If you look at a map from 1540 and you see the city of Mecca placed correctly, it is because Varthema put it there. Ludovico de Varthema dies in 1517, in his own bed, likely surrounded by his family. He defied the odds. He walked into the fire and walked back out. And as he closed his eyes, he knew a secret that the rest of Europe was only just beginning to learn. The world is not a map. The world is a place, and it is waiting to be seen.